Hello, Stagecraft students. I just wanted to make a quick video here to show you how to actually go about using your scale rule when you're measuring lines. It's pretty easy, like on the top of our worksheet when they have a line drawn for you and they sort of draw the arrows down, like the top part there. When you actually have to use your scale rule to measure a line, a couple little tips and tricks I have for you to make that go a little bit easier, because as we know, most of the time our lines aren't just in even increments of 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, etc. Right? Usually there are inches involved as well. So how do you do that when you're actually using your scale rule and laying it down on a piece of paper and trying to measure a line? So that's what I want us to look at today. Now, normally if we were in the classroom, I'd come around and help each of you individually, or I would just call you up to the desk at the front. We'd all gather around and I'd sort of show you this, but since we don't have that opportunity today, obviously, I'd make this quick video for you. So I'm looking at the bottom section of our How to Read a Scale Ruler worksheet, where you actually have to measure lines with your scale ruler in different scales. So I just want to do a quick example for you there so you're not confused. One thing to note, though, if you're looking at the side here, it's telling you different scales, so they're not all in the same, right? This one is in 1/4 inch, this one, oh, giant, 3 inch, this one up here, 1 inch, this one up here, 1/2 inch. So make sure you're paying attention to that scale, right, and finding the appropriate side or the appropriate edge on your scale rule to use as you're measuring these lines here. And we'll get a bunch more practice as we go throughout the rest of the semester and on other worksheets where we're measuring and laying in dimensions here. But let's look at this first simple one here. 1/4 inch. So I know the first thing before I measure this line, right, I've got to find the correct scale on my scale ruler, right? Oh, look, there it is, 1/4 inch. On the other side of 1/4 inch, right, sort of as we looked at earlier here, all the way down the other side is 1/8 inch, right? So I want to make sure that I'm not reading these little numbers up top, because those are 1/8 inch. I want to make sure I'm reading the big ones on the bottom, right? So if I slide all the way back over here, so I'm looking at these big numbers here on the bottom, right? This would be 0, obviously, starting out. There would be 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot, etc., right? And as we go. So let's take a look here. You had some practice on the top of the worksheet, but now that it's not drawn for you, how do you actually go about doing that? Well, one of two ways. I use a technique that sort of utilizes sliding your scale rule across. So if I were to try to measure this line here, I already saw that they're telling me that it's in 1/4 inch scale. So I found 1/4 inch over here. So I'm going to lay my scale rule down on the edge there, right? And make sure that I start with the 0, right? So I'm starting my line right here on the 0, right? I'm not going to start back here in my extended scale, right? That's for when I need to figure out how many inches are left over. So I'm starting with the 0 here, and I'm going to look all the way across to see how many I go before I don't get another full foot, right? So I know I'm past 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, 4, 5, 6, so on, so on, so on. I get all the way down here to 12, 13. I don't quite make it to 14 feet. I don't even make it to the midpoint here in the middle, right? That would be, like 6 inches halfway between. So I don't even make it to 13.6, right? So don't get confused here. Remember, they haven't drawn in, or they haven't written in all of the numbers for you, because there'd be too many numbers crammed on this one side here. So this is 1, this is 3, 5, right between my 6 and my 4. So I'm 12, not quite here. To 14, so I just went past 13. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slide my scale ruler over to where I land on the last full foot it passed, right? So I'm going to slide it over to the last full foot that it passed, right? So I see that's 13. So I know that I have 13 feet. Let me fix my scale rule here. So I've got 13 feet, and then counting, remember in 1/4 inch scale, each one of these little dashes is an inch. So I've got 13 feet, and it looks like 1, 2, 3, maybe 4. So somewhere either 13 feet 3 inches or 13 feet 4 inches. One of those two, right? 13 feet 3 or 13 feet 4. And then, you know, that sort of I guess illustrates sort of why we've moved to CAD for drafting, right? You can only be so accurate with the pencil line, right? So I know if this is somewhere either 13.3, really close to 13.4, right? That's why, like we said earlier, 1/4 inch scale, 1/8 inch scale, that's really useful for big things like ground plans where it doesn't really matter if you're within an inch or two as long as you're close, right? If we were building something like flats or pieces of furniture, something that needed a lot more detail, that's when we'd go into a bigger scale, right, where it gives us, all the way down to, as we were looking at, all the way down to 1/4 of an inch, right? Here we can only be accurate to within about the inch, right? So we're somewhere 13.3, 13.4, right? If we look at how we did that again, right? So I'm always going to start by putting the end of my line on my 0, right? So I started by putting the end of my line on my 0. I looked across and I tried to find the last full foot that it passed. It passed 12, it passed 13, it didn't get to 14, so I'm going to slide it over to 13, that last full foot that I passed. All right, so there's 13, and then counting my inches, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, right? So that's why we get our answer there, either 13 feet 3 inches or 13 feet 4 inches, right? As long as you're within that inch, you should be good to go there, right? If you want to, you could also sort of flip your scale ruler around and do it the other way, so then you don't sort of have to do the sliding. So what I mean there is, I'm actually going to slide my scale rule, flip it up, right? I was like this. I'm going to go like this. Whoop. Right? So if it makes more sense to you to read it like this, for some people it does, right? So I could start on my 0 there, right? Same thing, I'm going to slide it to the last full foot that I passed, my 13, and then count 1, 2, 3, this one, 3 or 4, right? Again, if I try and get really accurate here, get that right on the edge there. So 13, 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, maybe 4, right? So either way, some people, it's just a preference if you like to read, sort of left to right, right to left, right? Probably most of us, it might make more sense to you to have your 0 on the left going right, just because we read left to right. That's totally fine. But then you're sort of having to read upside down. So I usually tend to still utilize my scale rule this way, the first way I showed you, right? Lining it up on my 0, seeing the last full foot that I passed, sliding over, and then reading the inches over here on this side. That's the basics there, right? So just remember to start on your 0, right? Don't start with it all the way back here, because then you've given yourself an entire additional foot, right? So, now we're going to say it's 12.4 instead of 13.4. So remember to start on your 0, see the last full foot it passed, slide it to that last full foot, and read your inches. Hopefully that helps. Of course, I'm always available if you have questions. Thanks for watching.